I'd like to welcome you all to the Commissioners meeting for the Gig Harbor Fire Medic 1. We'll go ahead and start by asking those present to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Look for motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second. Roll call vote.
Commissioner Incy,
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson,
Yes.
Commissioner Sudich,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilsey is still trying to join the meeting.
Okay.
He's not here yet. And Chairman Urbina.
Yes. Any upcoming commissioner absences? Not seeing any. I know Alex is still trying to join.
I know that, sorry.
Any communications?
No communications this week.
Okay. Look for a motion to approve the minutes of the June 27th commissioner meeting.
So moved. Second.
Roll call vote.
Commissioner Incy,
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson,
Yes.
Commissioner Sudich.
Yes.
Let me add Commissioner Wilsey. Chairman Urbina,
Yes. Do we ask Tom to do that?
I'm gonna ask Tom to promote him right now.
Okay.
Tom, if you can hear us, can you please promote Commissioner Wilsey? He's currently in as an attendee.
There you go. Perfect.
Yes,
All
Thank you.
right, voucher approvals.
I'll move that we approve accounts payable vouchers 199,631 through 199,676, grand total of $289,385.59.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Commissioner Incy,
Yes.
Commissioner Nelson,
Yes.
Commissioner Sudich,
Yes.
Commissioner Wilsey,
yes,
Chairman Urbina.
Yes. So I did speak with the local and there's no report tonight. That gets us to the chief's report.
Great, we'll start with Chief Oldberg.
Good evening, Commissioners. I have three brief updates for you. I just wanted to let you know that we have started the 2024 budget build process. Yes, it is only July, but that's when it starts. You'll start seeing some correspondence from us probably in the September timeframe when we go to propose the readings of the budget and things like that. So, but internally, we have already started the process as of July 1st. The second item is, as you're familiar with, we reported earlier that we have submitted our request for the state and local purchase program to replace our SCBA's. We're waiting for the reply on that. Everything has been submitted. We anticipate that to be done probably within the next couple of weeks. And then we will bring those resolutions before you probably in August for that program. But it's moving forward and everything is on timeline there. The third item is I just wanted to report back that we have made a conditional offer to information systems manager for the organization. I think Chief Doan had reported earlier in our previous meetings that as we kind of move away from the consortium concept and into internal information technology management here with Gig Harbor, that we had posted that position. We had probably just around 20 applicants. The applicants went through a resume and review process. They went through Zoom interviews was the next step. The third step was an in-person panel here with the select members from across the organization. And then the final interview was with Chief Doan and myself. So we have submitted we have put out a conditional offer. That person did accept that. And as soon as we get through some of the background checks and some of those processes and we're kind of assured of everything's going to work, then we'll put that out officially, the name of who it is and things like that to the organization. Kind of want to get through it a little bit farther before we do that. But the feedback we got was great from everybody who participated. And the recommendation for that person was consistent with every step of the process. That's all I have. I'll stand for questions.
Right, Chief Booth.
Good evening. I wanted to tell you gentlemen about two classes that the health and safety section hosted last month and this month here for the operations staff as well as all staff. In June, 4 consecutive Fridays, we hosted a local provider named Phoebe Mulligan. She works with a lot of police departments. She's very well known in the first responder community, and she taught a class called Understanding Trauma. Got great feedback from both the day staff as well as the response staff that were able to attend that training. So that was very well received. This month, we're hosting our two fire chaplains, John Burgess and Gary Rudd, are both teaching a class that was actually requested by one of the line lieutenants. And it's the class, they titled the class Caring for Grieving Persons. And it's really just a kind of a step-by-step of how we can support the families of folks that are dealing with a grieving situation in lieu of having a chaplain available. And so we've done 3 of those sessions. We have 1 more to go before the end of the month. But so far, the feedback has been really, really good in that respect as well.
In the report.
That's it.
All right. Chief Meyer.
Good evening. Just wanted to update you on a few things that operations and with the help of human resources is doing. So we completed our driver operator process. So we have 35 candidates on an eligibility list. So just wanted a good process, first time in our organization for this level of assignment in our organization. And it's just great working with the union and human resources putting that together. Also, too, we've kicked off the promotional process for upcoming in the fall, and this is for battalion and division chiefs and lieutenants. And the announcement is out. So a lot of people are talking about that. A lot of, again, just creating opportunities for our personnel and our employees. So happy about that. July 3rd and 4th, busy time for us. On the July 3rd, we ran 25 alarms. July 24th, we ran 22 alarms. Some of our partnering agencies were more busier than we were, but we did have 2, I don't want to say significant brush fires, but they were high profile brush fires near the Fox Island Bridge. So those are kind of the, I guess, high points of our response on the 3rd and the 4th of July. On the also too, one of the things that we did was there was a large fire out of Mason County, 250 acres, went to state mobilization. So we were asked for resources to deploy. And on the 4th of July, we made the decision not to deploy because of the threat and the busyness in our own county. So just FYI on that. On the 6th of July, we had a fire here in our jurisdiction out in Crescent Valley. It was about a 2.5 acre brush fire out on the 12800 block of Crescent Valley. No structures were damaged and the crews made a good stop. And so, but we were out there for 6 or 7 hours, mopping that up and just making sure that it didn't go anywhere or have any problems or surprises later on. So those are some activity in the 4th of July weekend. And then also too, this Sunday, we assisted with District 16 had a larger brush fire and we sent some units out there, Battalion 51, and then we backfilled some of our stations in support of a more regional response. Chief Johnson went out there and assisted as the zone coordinator, and then Perry and myself came in and helped assist the operations here with our personnel. So, and then last week, just another thing on resource management, we deployed a strike team leader and a strike team leader trainee down to the tunnel fire down in the Columbia Gorge. And Chief Johnson was the strike team leader and Andy Cochran was the strike team leader trainee. So they had a good assignment and they were down there for a week and they have returned home a couple days ago. So unless there's any questions on my report, that's the end of it.
And to piggyback on that, I got a call from the IC at the fire. And that's rarely happened, just to tell me what a great job Chief Johnson and Andy were doing. And called me while they were down there. So thank you, Chief. Great job. Some other things to report. We are scheduled for mediation with the union on Friday, the August the 11th. So that is scheduled. The mediator has been chosen. And we as a team are working to be prepared for that mediation coming up. And so the staff, mostly just Chief Oldenburg and I have been working on it, and then we'll get Commissioner Enzi and we'll see up to date that day, so they don't have to go to all the meetings. Our levy is moving along, and our plan, we're running the play that we put together with Strategies 360, and they're doing a great job. We're doing social media. We got a voter pamphlet that's getting ready to be or the voter pamphlet. The voter pamphlet came out, which has spawned some questions, and Commissioner Nelson and I took a question from a citizen today. We have the mailer going out very soon, and we're just running the play. And everywhere I go, at least, things are very positive. So things are going very well on that front. As you know, I'm on the Washington Fire Chiefs Board, and with that, the last couple of days, work has been coming. Guess you can't get on board and then not be expected to do some work. So I've been getting up to speed on the board, and I will be going to, I missed the very first meeting, which is next week. But a couple of months after that, I'll go to Wenatchee for my first in-person board meeting. Been working with Chief Johnson and the architects on the first drafts of the Station 51 design. Also, I was contacted and working with the IFF and our local and the Washington State Council firefighters to some rules have changed on it's called the PSOB, Public Safety Officer Death Benefit. And actually Eliza's family may qualify for it. So we are working with the union and myself and Eliza's family to try to get that application in. And last but not least, I think I've reported to you a little bit since I've got here some frustrations with county EMS, and all of us chiefs are frustrated just with processes and things, and we have made that one of our number one items to work on. And that's what Chief Morrow is calling me about, because many of their firefighters did not get recertified by the county. And I think this may be coming to a head. And the reason I want to tell you this is this may get escalated pretty soon. This may be something that goes all the way to the county council. And I just wanted you to be aware of it. I met last Friday, Chief and I did with Norma and with Dr. Waffle and with Jody Ferguson, more about a personnel issue that had happened, some things that I thought we could work better together, and we addressed it directly. But at that time, I asked for a check sheet for recertification so that we don't run into this problem. We can be prepared. And I've received that, and we'll follow it. But at the end of the day, as chiefs, we talk about it being an inconsistent application of non-existent rules, that the sand shifts every time we try to apply. And we're getting frustrated, and we've been singled out over the years. We're coming together as chiefs, and this may escalate all the way to the county council. And I just wanted you to know that. We're doing our best to keep it at the lowest level.
What kind of recertification did he, what do they?
EMT and paramedics.
Oh, okay, oh, okay.
Yeah, medical certifications.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah. And so Chief Morrow, they had their board meeting last night. They're literally looking at lawsuits. They're looking at, and so he was gonna update me before I told you this update of what's happening at Central Pierce. But I thought it was important to let you know, because this may go bigger than just individually working with it. That's all I have.
Any questions? Thank you, Chief. Any standing committee reports?
The Finance and Audit Committee, we had our intake meeting with the state auditor here last week, and so assume they're probably doing their thing, and then we will hear when we do their outgoing meeting, if we have any findings or anything at all. So that the audit is in process now.
Anything else? Okay. I don't have anything to add for the chairman's report. 2022 bond update. Chief Johnson.
Good evening, everybody. So as I've done before, I'll just kind of walk through the projects. So Station 53, we have received a written order approving our minor amendment. So the minor amendment basically, we are working off of the original building permit from 2011. And we're changing the structure 25% or less, so we can, that's a lot quicker, easier to work through. So that was approved, we got the letter. And then shortly after that, we received the site development plan approval. So there's the site development and then the building. So we have approval for the site development and what we're doing. Now we're just waiting for the building plans review and that approval. Station 57, same thing, we received our written order that the minor amendment was approved. We haven't received the site development. There's a few things that they're still working out and a couple of questions. With 57, the county has asked for a 5-foot right of way for future along Crescent Valley and Drummond. So it's just one of those things where it sits for potentially future development. Training campus, completed all the applications for the water extension agreement with the city. Those got turned in and I paid the first series of engineering fees for them to look through. The next step is after that, it's after the engineers look at it, it will actually go to a city council meeting for the city council to approve the water extension agreement with us for the training campus at Station 58. I had talked before about the cultural resource survey. It was concluded with nothing found. We went through it and no edits at all. So it's actually been forwarded to Pierce County. So that's just our next step. And then we completed a revision of the floor 2. It's more of it's a required secondary means of egress out the back. It's not going to be a primary means of egress. So we changed that up a little bit and cleaned it up. Made it easier to construct and probably a little bit cheaper than we had in the original design. Next thing, I will be sending it to you. I missed it. I just haven't sent it to you. Is we have a new project schedule that came out last week. So I'll get that to all of you tomorrow. And then within the next week or two, I'm working with Rice Fergus on a new expenditure forecast for all projects moving forward. Once I get that and actually work out whatever there's any kinks with it, I'll forward that as well. Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Brings us to old business. Health and Safety Expo, Chief Delman.
Thank you, commissioners. I promised I would report back on this item. It was brought up as an idea to bring back the Health and Safety Expo. So we looked at that as a command staff. We went over our projects, our priorities for the year. And although we think it's great, we think it's wonderful, we at this point would rather not do it simply for the fact of 2 or 3 reasons. Number one, just our core mission and what our mission is. I've been working hard to try to narrow our focus and do, I think our department got and for all good reasons, said yes to everything, right? And we were doing a lot of things. So we're trying to narrow our focus and do a few things well, rather than everything that comes to us. We looked at our project priority list that you had approved, and didn't know how we could fit that in there. So, and then last but not least, although it helps our community, it seemed to help a lot of private businesses also. And we didn't think that was our place. So for those 3 or 4 reasons, we're respectfully, unless you vote and tell me I'm wrong, that to not do the health and safety fair. Again, great idea. We think it's great for our community. I think it'd be great for our department, but just our workload and our bandwidth, we'd rather not do it, if that's okay with you.
I'm the one that brought that up, and I think I concur completely. When we were doing it before, it was a quieter time. Simple as that.
Yeah.
I mean, we didn't have 5 assistant chiefs for one thing. You know, that says it all. And only reason I brought it up was just for discussion, you know, what if type thing. And I appreciate you discussing it, and it makes total sense. Maybe down the road somewhere, things settle down. Not in your lifetime. It's worth talking about way down the road.
Is there any of you guys been here long enough, when we first, I don't know about first, it may even start, but when we used to have it was Harbor Heights or Goodman, when it was in the school, was the fire department actually the organizer of that, or was it some of the other health care people in the community?
So we were an eventee, kind of a
Right.
prevention division, so we were an eventee back then, and I think then it shifted a little bit.
Yeah.
I think our facility became available, and I think it kind of grew this direction.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought we were just an entity, not the organizer totally of it, but it kind of, like you said, it kind of, it morphed. And while it was a good PR thing and stuff, you're right. I think it morphed beyond what really there from what I think it's regards to our involvement in it. So yeah, from what it started out as.
Thank you. I think good idea, like I said, and Commissioner, they do this to me a lot. I bring them ideas and they go, what do you not want me to do on this list to do your idea? Okay, so Commissioner, what do you not want me to do? To do your idea. That's what they do to me a lot.
That's what I said, when we used to do that, there wasn't 5 assistant chiefs, which says it all right there.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you for the idea, and we'll keep looking at it. So Crystal's here as she's gearing up, and I want to introduce what we're doing here. So since the day I got here, I was shown Chief Burgess's PowerPoint about the future, about he had put together some predictions of when we'd be able to staff, when we'd be able to hire, he put together the levy, you know, when we were doing that. And since I've got here from you, from the community, from the firefighters, has been when are we hiring? When are we adding staff? When, right? And we knew we needed to bring Crystal on a year ago, and she's been stacked with budget builds and audits, and we finally got to it. And she did a great job, and she led this. But in essence, what I asked her to do, and Chief Oldenburg led this, is look into the future, the next few years. If the levy passes, we already passed the last one, we passed the bond. Look at the future, look at our income, look at our expenses, and look at our capital plan, and bring that all together. And when will we be able to buy engines? When will we be able to put on a ladder truck? When will we be able to staff a medic unit? And Crystal put together the next 5-6 years. We brought together all of our capital needs, all of our personnel needs, and we now have that for you. We can at least answer it. So I won't steal her thunder by going into the answer, but that's what we're doing here. We have updated Chief Burgess's PowerPoint, and looking into the future with our capital needs and our personnel needs. And this is only as good as it is today, right? We do know the AV, we got that. Sorry, I'm starting to go into our presentation. We do know the AV now, but the year after that and the year after that are predictions, right? We do have hard numbers for our contract and our personnel expenses, but I'll stop talking, because if I keep talking, I'll steal more of her thunder. Crystal, thank you and great job.
Okay, let me share my screen. Can you see that?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay, so we're going to go through our multi-year capital and staffing plan that we've developed. And the first piece, and I know Chief went over this a little bit, but I'm going to go over it anyway. There we go. Our objective for this plan and this project was to go over all of our revenue, our levy forecasting, both for this next levy period and the one after that. Our personnel expenditures, this also includes current collective bargaining agreements, and then also consolidating the fleet, facilities, and our equipment. all into one cohesive forecast that we can look at for the next 6 years. Then going from that information, developing some options for our future priorities, and then having a discussion of what that looks like for the next 6 years and after that. So before we get into the details, just on the high macroeconomic level, what we're seeing, and this is pretty typical at the state and the federal level, we have high inflation. This is no different for the public safety sphere. We have high interest rates that has continued from 2022 to 2023. The Fed is expecting a couple more increases here this year, so we don't anticipate that to decline. We're still seeing some declining real estate values and still seeing a little bit of slowing on the real estate sales. For us being a property tax driven government entity where that is our main source of revenue, these things in the economy do affect our ability to have operations and have funding from the property tax standpoint. Going into the local forecast, going at the state level, one thing you'll note, the Washington level and the King and Seattle level, they actually are seeing a higher decrease in their assessed valuation for this next property tax year, mostly due to Seattle, but cumulatively at the King County level as well. At the Pierce County level, this is the one that was just published. You can find it on the Pierce County Assessor site. Cumulatively for the entire county is experiencing a 2 to 3% decrease in assessed valuation for next year. And then moving into how that looks in for our district, in the district property values are about flat. I would say it depends on which zip code you look at. Some of our service areas are seeing anywhere from 0 to 2% increases, and some of the zip codes are experiencing decreases between 0 to 2% decreases. So cumulatively, our district is seeing a flat AV growth for this next year. The other highlight that I just didn't mention was GEMT. That is our federal supplement for Medicaid and Medicare reimbursements from transports. There is a clarification and how they treat what is allocable and reimbursable for expenses. And so all participating agencies will see a reduction in their GEMT moving forward. It's not official yet. It is still in negotiations at the state and the federal level, but that is planned for next year. So the thing that lends into this next six-year forecast, we still are experiencing high operating expenses and inflation. We are experiencing reduced revenue sources, both for property tax and for our GEMT revenues. And we do need a significant investment for capital needs. And that's the piece that we'll go into more detail here in the next few slides. Okay, so before we go into the details, the base assumptions for this forecast considers federal, state, and local forecasts. So this includes that property tax piece, the GEMT piece, CPI forecast, and all that information. This does assume that the levy that is appearing to voters on August 1st passes. It does assume some growth in our other revenue sources. It does assume a very conservative rate of expense growth. So what I'll say to that is, while CPI might be in the 5 to 10% range, our forecast for the basis of this conversation is forecasted at a much lower rate at the cumulative method, mostly to assume that we'll look at those line items in our maintenance and operations budget to have a more accurate picture. And then this also uses all the work that the district did last year, both for developing the 2023 budget. There was a series of right-sizing activities where we did go to that line item deep dive and reassess what our needs were at that level. So all of that body of work going into this year's budget is used into this next 6-year forecast. Okay, for the purposes of this chart and this visual, what this is intended to show is our revenues, both with our base taxes, that is our property tax for both the fire and EMS levies, Other revenue are things like investment interest and our EMS transport bills. The levy reset that you see in green, that is the $1.50 levy lid lift that is currently available to voters on August 1st. And the orange flat AV impact is actually the revenue we will not receive during the 6-year period due to the assessed valuation being flat in the first year of a 6-year levy. So with a 6-year levy, we are at the maximum allowable rate of $1.50. That is the math and calculation of the first year. The second year is calculated based on the terms that is in the voter pamphlet, which would be a 6% inflator. That is only if there is an actual inflator or growth in the assessed valuation in the current and the next year. So for example, 2024, we had the same AV as we did for this year. What that means for 25 will not see an increase unless there is an AV growth from 2024 to 2025. Right now, we are not projecting any increase at the AV forecast for the following year is also still flat. So I have one more chart that is the same visualization, but a little more dramatic. Same data as the prior slide, but just gives you that same impact. It is a $34 million impact of revenue that we will not receive during the 6-year period, just due to where the economy is in terms of assessed valuation in our district in the first year of the levy. And I'll just pause here because I know this is really our significant slide that really frames our ability to fund the next few slides and go through the capital if there's any questions on this one.
This was the deflating slide for me, right? Because if we didn't have flat AV, we would have been able to do everything we all wanted, staffing another engine, medic unit, but buy the capital we needed. And because the AV is flat next year, and I think she predicted the next year, and then she put in 6% after that. So that might be too rosy, right? We'll be fine, but it's not as exciting as I want it.
Okay.
Right.
So there's no further discussion on that slide. I'll move into the next one. So there is some good news. This visual shows our base 6-year forecast, but includes our personnel and expenditures. And what I'll note that's different from this slide from the prior one is we do have enough funding programmed or expected during the 6-year period to cover our base operations. So even with the flat AV and the timing of the levy lid lift, we are fortunate in this current economic climate where we're not in a position like other entities that are having to review personnel costs and possible layoffs and other significant reductions. So we do have sufficient funds to cover our base operations and our personnel under the current collective bargaining agreement, which goes until for the next 3 years. So I would say that decreased levy lid lift is not spectacular. And yes, there were priorities that we had anticipated during that time. We are still fortunate enough to have enough revenue to support our base operations during the 6-year period.
Crystal, will you explain a natural question between 24 and 25, how the revenue goes down and why?
Yeah, so in this visualization, we'll go into this in a few more slides, but there is some program one-time funds that we have anticipated to use for capital purchases. So we did transfer, or with the approval, the fire commissioners transferred money into reserves for capital assets that will arrive in 2024. So there actually is some one-time revenue that is sitting in that line in 2024 that won't exist in 2025.
Thank you. That makes more sense. Appreciate it.
Sure. So this visualization shows your personnel. This is your salary and benefits for staff. The M&O is your maintenance and operations. As you can see, this is not to scale because your dark blue is a little bit higher. But what I will say, our maintenance operations is just shy of $6 million for the entire department. That includes things like your facilities, your vehicle fuel and maintenance and parts and utilities, all those associated pieces, but we're still predominantly funded through our personnel expenditures, are a little over 80%. Reserves that you see in green, that is the little bit that we need to continue to move to the reserve fund to meet our 2-month requirement per our management policy. And that orange yellowy color for revenue is the projected revenue for all sources over the 6-year period. Okay, I'm going to sit here for a second. The next piece of the presentation is going to go into more specifics about our fleet, facilities, and equipment budgets. But before I do that, is there any questions about the prior slides?
I don't see any, Crystal.
Okay. Great. So now we're going to go into the cumulative work that the district went through. There was a series of individuals and multiple data that we pulled together. This does include, at the summary level, a full inventory of our equipment, its life and expected replacement. On our facilities side, we did collaborate both with what was included in the capital plan that is funded by the bond program and what is included within our existing operations budget, and then the pieces that are still unfunded and still need to be met from a facility standpoint. And then on the fleet side, we also collaborated with a full inventory of our equipment, their expected life, and planned replacement. And that piece will have a few more slides on that will kind of go into a little bit of detail on a couple of the different scenarios we walked through and trying to align both of our expected capital needs and the anticipated replacement and meeting those needs with the revenue forecast that we have. Okay, so for this first slide, if we were to take a purely mathematical approach to our inventory of asset replacement and without looking at revenue or life cycle or actual operational needs, and just looking at the age of the equipment, we would need to replace 31 assets in this next 6-year cycle. This is purely just looking at the age of the asset, what the manufacturer operating replacement cycle would be, and then we would replace. So regardless of funding and operational needs, 31 assets in a 6-year period is a pretty significant investment needed to support that. If we're going into the purely mathematical approach to this, this would show you that display at an annual level over the 6-year period. So you'll notice there's a couple in that first year that we have planned in 23. Those we actually already had budgeted in our 2023 budget. And then you'll notice here is where, if you're just looking at life cycle, there's a significant investment needed both on the engines and on the medic units in the next 3-year period. This is purely based on our actual inventory of assets, both of staffed and unstaffed station locations. Moving into our asset replacement, this is the same information, but just with a dollar value assigned to each asset. You'll notice that this most significant investment would be for our engines. Those have always been fairly expensive from an apparatus and asset standpoint, but the inflation and supply and demand of the fleet in the last couple of years has been no different and has been quite expensive. The other piece that you'll notice here, the colors are a little, sorry. At the top of that slide, you'll see the 1.7 million is specialty. It's in the dark green. And then the 1.9 on the right hand of the side is actually the tenders. Those greens are a little close. So over the 6-year period, for the cumulative amount that would be needed would be a $20 million investment from 2023 to 29 for just the fleet. Moving into our equipment replacement. So we did go through an inventory of our medical equipment, the IT and computer needs that we have, communications being our radios, and then safety and health for the most part, is bunker gear. So we actually looked at the inventory and life of our specific bunker gear and when they need to be replaced. Same thing with our medical equipment, phones, GTACs, iPhones, Surfaces, the whole thing. You'll notice here the most significant investment that's needed over the 6-year period is communications. So that's the radio replacement. And then on the other next biggest one is medical equipment. So that's here in the 2024 and 2027 area. So over the 6-year period for equipment, we have $4.2 million worth of equipment needs. Okay, going into the next category of facilities. So we did go and review our current capital program and what is included under the bond for our current projected projects. And then we also looked into what we currently had planned in the current year and next year's budget from an operations standpoint for facilities, mostly in the preventative maintenance and repair categories. So this visual, you have 3 different categories. Plan means it's in the operations budget already. Bond blue is what is already projected within the capital bond program. And no in the yellow, that is the current things that we have identified that are either past life cycle or in need of replacement that currently do not have a funding source. So for facilities over that next 6-year period, it's $3.7 million. So cumulatively, if we pull all the capital together of all of those slides, our base operations, which is the base personnel and maintenance and operations budgets, and our projected revenue over the next 6-year period, you will see we have an $11 million gap if we were to replace everything from a mathematical calculation of replacing every asset and everything during that 6-year period.
Crystal, can I stop you for a sec?
Of course.
On slide 35, the facilities forecast by type, the 3.7, that's the amount that's unfunded currently?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I would say of all the areas, facilities, we may have more flexibility as we move closer through the development process of our bond projects. I know JJ has been working with architect through each of those projects, so there might be more opportunities there. But at least at the current time when we did this evaluation, that's where we were at. Oh, wrong step. Okay, and so for in the next couple of slides, I'm going to go through a couple assumptions we took for our first scenario, and then go through a couple of the scenarios and options that we worked through. Unless you want a break. I had a break from my last set of slides, but I'm happy to leave it.
I think we can continue.
Okay. So of the current options that we'll go into next, there are a couple assumptions in our forecast. The first one we briefly touched on earlier with that revenue number. We transferred $830,000 earlier this year into the reserve. This was 2 assets that were budgeted in 22, excuse me, that did not arrive in 2022, that we knew would not arrive in 2023, that actually arrived next year. So those dollars were sitting in the revenue, I'm sorry, in the reserve fund for when they arrive and when we will pay for those 2 assets. So this forecast does assume this and using those funds. It does assume the current collective bargaining agreement terms starting in 2023 and 24 and 25 have a couple new features that are included in that contract. This forecast assumes that. It also assumes current similar terms for the out years. It also includes us participating in the state local borrowing program for our SCBA purchase. That is something that we're currently in the middle of. It does include local borrowing program for medic units and tender purchases of when we decide to have them ordered and scheduled for replacement. And then it does assume evaluation of participating in a lease program with Zoll for some of our medical equipment. Okay, so this first visual is no real scenario other than just a visual of what it would look like if we did replace everything with no borrowing options. So as you can see with the yellow line of revenue, we do not have the available funds to be able to support buying everything with cash at the time that we would order and need it if we replaced everything. So this is more just that visual of if we were to order and pay cash for 11 engines in 25 and 26. We're not in a position nor an organization large enough to be able to support ordering 11 engines via cash in the first couple of years of a levy lift. So moving into the next slide, it's the same information, but utilizing the borrowing that we talked about. So this is if we were to utilize borrowing for the medic units and tenders, using the local program for the SCBA purchase, participating in lease programs for our other equipment. You'll notice that with the line, the revenue line, it smooths the expenditure. It does delay some of it with the way that the borrowing works. So some of it just gets pushed out into that 26, 27, 28, 29 period. And then there's actually still some expenditures needed to support that borrowing in the next levy lift. That would be the 2020, 30 to 35. So as you can see, even if we were to try to borrow our way out of buying all of these assets, we're not, at least in the 6-year period, in a position to be able to do that. So for those that don't like the graph, this is the same information, but in a table. It shows our revenue at the net of our basic personnel and maintenance operations, what the borrowing line item would look like, what would we pay in cash from a capital purchase, what would we pay for our additional facilities needs, and then what the gap would look like. So it does show at the bottom there for the current gap what it is on an annual basis. What I will say is, for example, in 2024, while it is a positive number, you'll notice that we would need those funds in the out years of the levy lift. You'll see negatives in 2026, 27, 28, 29. In this scenario, we are still short $11 million. But so this is more the scenario to show with our projected asset replacement as it is today, what it would be with the resources we have available to us over the 6-year period. I'll just pause here before we go into any of the other scenarios. Okay, moving into our next scenario. This option reviews replacing the 5 engines that are at our staffed locations and utilizing funds within the capital bond for those assets. So you'll notice the same information, both from the base and facilities space, sorry. But from the capital standpoint, that has some smoothing. So it moves those capital funds from an operating expense, but more to what is eligible under the capital bond program, and then does not replace the existing unstaffed engines. So in the prior example, we have 11 engines that were scheduled for replacement. In this scenario, it shows 5. And then I'll just show the next slide, which is also the same information, but in a table for those that are looking for that visual. So the same information from the net revenue standpoint. You'll notice that our borrowing does shift because it moves and utilizes another eligible resource for those engines on the borrowing side. Capital purchases, that's our cash that we would be using towards capital purchases over that 6-year period. And then you'll notice here on the bottom, you still have some additional resources in 24 that would be needed in the out years. With a cumulative total over the 6-year period, it still would be a gap of $4 million. Okay, so we're going to go into one more example. As we were developing this, we were trying to go through what was the operation needs, what were the capital needs that we have, what the asset fleet needs were. There's a lot of collaborative conversation about what things that we could modify, what things we do or don't need to replace. So this next scenario we'll go into has a couple more revisions in addition to just touching and discussing engines. And so scenario C, this is the one where we were trying to look at what resources we have within that 6-year period. It still has those 5 engines that we spoke to in scenario B, moving those into the capital bond program. It does talk about some reassigning of assets. So for example, the Kodiak would be replaced with a brush truck, which is a much more significantly cheaper asset. Looking at our utility vehicles and what type of vehicles we could reduce from that standpoint, and then would also be looking at the replacement year for the rescue vehicle and the tenders. So rather than looking at what was available and flexibility on the life cycle of those 2 items. So for scenario C, you'll see we're a little bit closer. This uses borrowing for what we can borrow, maximizing the use of our capital bond program, looking at life cycle and flexibility of what we can for the assets that can be moved into the next levy period. And we get closer here to a 6-year gap of 1.7 million. So you'll notice on this one, mostly because of the way that we shift around the assets, you do still see a positive cash value in 2024. But just with the way the timing works in terms of our borrowing, yes, there's a $4 million surplus, which I hate to use the word surplus, but addition at the end of 2024, you'll see we do need those funds for year 2 through 6 of the levy lid lift. And we're still, at least with this as a projection, this is a forecast, we're still negative 1.7 million. But that's within a portion that, you know, there's a lot of different factors that can change during that 6-year period. This gets us closer to what would be a recommendation for a balanced capital forecast. And then this one, actually, I'll pause before I go into the next one. Most of the next slides are more supplemental.
High level, commissioners, what, I mean, you kind of see, we had Mount Rainier, we called it, and it was just, we're moving from a volunteer to from a combination to a paid fire department. This department used to have 9 fire stations with, we still do, but with equipment, and volunteers would show up and we're changing our mindset to a 5-station staff fire department, maybe 6 or 7 in the future, but we don't need fire engines at stations that don't have firefighters because, right? So we cut out those engines. We've done the same with water tenders, with our utility rigs and our SCBAs. So Chief Meyer and Chief Black have just done a really good job of shifting to from a combination to a paid fire department because nobody's coming for that engine sitting at 54. And with this scenario, like Crystal said, it does put us 1.7 million over 6 years. Of course, we'd like to see it in the green rather than the red. That's a manageable amount. Like I said earlier, I was deflated at first, but if you think about this, this gets us 5 engines. Our medic units are replaced, brush trucks, everything that we need. We're not going to be able to add any FTEs at this moment, but we're going to be able to take care of the assets that we have. We're going to be able to improve our assets. We got the bond to redo our facilities, and we'll be able to keep all of our employees. And so I'm optimistic, and we'll continue each year to evaluate it.
Any questions, commissioners?
Crystal's got more, sorry, when she pauses, I talk. But the reminder, this does not have a truck company, and this does not have a replacement of the rescue in it at all in the next 6 years.
Yeah. So all of the other slides that are included in the packet are more supplemental, just to further detail some of the information and assets that we've included in this forecast. So this one that I have displayed right now just shows that under scenario C, we have currently projected 21 assets to be replaced in the 6-year period. Most of that being in the first couple of years of the levy. And the reason why you notice, excuse me, that most everything kind of falls in that 2025 space is just due to supply and demand. Even if we were to order engines today, they're not going to arrive in 2023 or even in 2024. So this entire forecast, both for the borrowing and the asset replacement, is timed to the cycle in which it takes to order, arrive, and pay for assets in that 6-year period. And then those, for if you want them, it's included in the packet. There, it goes into the details of our assets, both on the year that they were purchased, what we did buy them in those years, and where they are within the forecasted plan in that scenario C for replacement. So I'll just quickly go into that. So there's no discussion on any of those, but just more for supplemental information as people needed them. Anyone have any questions for me?
I'm not seeing any, Crystal. Thank you so much.
So with this plan, like Crystal said, we already informed you, we're gonna hit the local loan program for the SCBA's, where we'll buy 5 new fire engines. There's a committee already speccing them out, and try to order them after the bond passes on August 1st. And as soon as they're ready to order 5 new engines. One manufacturer is, who knows how far out. I hear numbers all the time from 50 to 60 months away for a Pierce. There's another Rosenbauer that we're looking at that's closer to 24 months out, which is still crazy, right? So like I said, we'll get 5 new engines. We'll be able to replace our medic units. We'll be able to take care of our assets. We'll be able to build our buildings, but the projection does not have a ladder truck, does not have a rescue in it, and does not have any new people in it over the next 6 years. Did I miss anything? All right. Any feedback for us? You know, it kind of is what it is. We went over this with the battalion chiefs and the division chiefs and the union, looking for feedback. Is there anything we missed? Could we do it differently? And we didn't get much, you know, because it is what it is. What else are we going to do? Right? I'm happy that we can keep all of our people and we can buy some new fire engines. So
One thing to remember, this will change every year. You know, the numbers will get updated, hopefully. You know, hopefully real estate values continue to increase locally and these numbers change. That's my hope. So, but the estimates are not according to trends. They're not very conservative. I mean, this is good estimates. So Crystal, I really appreciate your time and effort putting that together.
Ditto, yeah, I don't know why I started crossing on page 2. I don't know how you go through 30 some pages on that, but I tell you what, you continue to amaze in the work you do with all this and kind of just show kind of how much we might have been missing on some things. So thank you so much.
Any other comments?
I think it's imperative that we move forward with this. What was relayed to me is we've had situations where apparatus has broken down, luckily, at the incident. We can have all the medics and all the firefighters in the world, but if we can't get them to point A to point B. Doesn't do much good, so that's my thought.
Yeah, you can't get there.
Thank you, and, you know, Chief Aldenberg, Crystal, and Chief Black, and the whole team, Chief Meyer and Booth, all worked on this for a long time, and did a great job, so.
Yeah, thank you all.
Yeah,
Really appreciate it.
absolutely.
All right, that brings us to open public comment. State your name for the record. You'll have 3 minutes. Is there anybody? Okay. That gives us to good of the order. Any good of the order? Seeing none. Any special interest upcoming events? All right. I'll move that we adjourn. Our next regular meeting will be Tuesday, July 25th at 5 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you.